at this current time. So although a lot of people might not give this game as much credit, to us it is very important, and we are going to try our hardest to take this series over Tempo Storm.
Man, I have so much respect for McIntyre being able to talk about how important this match is for the team. But even if nothing else, this team has had so many struggles throughout all of Phase 1. They have had issues with shot calling in the early game that's led them to a point where they have to make the miracle comeback in the late game. And granted, this incredible 5-player team, this roster of team fighters is so good at doing that, but they have to put themselves in that place time and time again has not always worked out for them. And I really don't think that they can rely on that versus a team as strong as Tempo.
The biggest thing to look at when looking at these two teams specifically is we have on one side B-Step, a team who's so very comfortable waiting to the late game to try and get those fights, versus our best team at forcing an advantage, right? The biggest difference between Gale Force Esports and Tempo Storm, I often talk about it being, it is their ability to be like, we have this advantage, how much can we get out of it? And I think B-Step's been relying on North America's lack of ability to force the issue, and Tempo Storm's the only one that's going to be like, we aren't waiting for your level 20 fight. The game is going to end before that happens.
There are some battlegrounds preferred by B-Step that might enable this, and I like that already we have one of those battlegrounds. We're going to Dragonshire. It's been a favorite, a pick for B-Step, largely because not only is it one of their best chances of getting to the late game, but they scrim often versus No Tomorrow, and we know that No Tomorrow has loved this battleground for a long time. So it is a little bit of a mix of this and that has led B-Step to liking this battleground, but this is a spot that Tempo Storm has lost in the late game before on Dragonshire, even commanding the rest of the game.
I think for B-Step's success in this series, this is a great place to start, and all for the reasons that you have already listed. Mainly, for me, it's going to be that Tempo Storm, no matter how dominant they are, no matter how good they are at forcing those issues, this map just says no to that. But much like that of Infernal Shrines can just force the late game naturally, no matter how good you are at the game. Unless your opponent makes a catastrophic mistake, it's just unrealistic that B-Step won't get that late game team fight. And then Tempo is already shown to be kind of vulnerable to that on Dragonshire.
Another fear I have for B-Step is their issue that they have had a lot, and they have talked a lot about, is the meta, and when they have a new meta, trying to understand it and get used to it in time. They now have had a week to get used to the current meta, but there are going to be some adjustments before playoffs again. So what can they do here? How can they be at their fullest form, and then can they adapt again once they get into playoffs, especially if they have to play that extra match being in 5th place if they lose today?
Yeah, so that, again, is only going to make this series that much more important here for B-Step and the members. McIntyre alluding a bit towards that, giving us the insight and the thought process here for the team. It's all going to start with Dragonshire.
Game 1 on Dragonshire. Tempo Storm, looking at Dragonshire, some possibilities. They have had a lot of Greymane focus, loving Greymane throughout Part 2, and especially once his changes came in that beefed him up even stronger.
Beefed him up good. So what do we see out of the bans here in this game coming out from Tempo Storm? Globals are something we've seen banned in the past. They're going to go with the Uther removal, though, hinting towards maybe that Malfurion first pick. What do we see as the response from B-Step? Oh, you don't want, nobody gets supports. That's what B-Step decides.
That's pretty cool.
Haven't locked it in yet, but that would be pretty neat to see that removed.
Yeah, in general, we've talked about the Malfurion versus Uther debate. Uther being able to give extra armor once he has Guardian of Ancient Kings at level 7, because there are roots and silences, 2 of the crowd control effects that generate that additional armor because of a devotion.
It is a really cool mechanic that Uther, you know, he's the first to kind of have that what if you don't cleanse mechanic, and into the Malfurion. Just oftentimes when you think of Malf, it's not his raw healing that separates him in that role. It's his playmaking on top of that. And so it's going to be not the raw healing output, but again, that CC, the setup of those kills. And Uther, is the perfect answer to denying all of those things. B-Step took them a whole minute, but they got there.
This is the B-Step way, though.
It very much is.
B-Step takes their time with things. They want to think everything out.
They are
understandable.
The epitome of Heroes of the Storm procrastinators. They are. They just wait until they have to do it, and then they're like, I guess, you know, we'll do it now. Flip the switch, win the fight, win the game, and it's why they are sitting at that 5th place spot, middle of the pack here, fighting for that 4th place position over Superstars.
B-Step has continued to show these flashes of the potential that we know that this 5-man roster has. It's just a matter of time for me. That's how I think of B-Step. It's a matter of time until they cause all sorts of disruption in the top ranks of our standings.
I was the person who did that interview with McIntyre before, and I actually spent probably 2 hours after that hanging out, playing with him, talking to him about just what it means to be on B-Step right now. And one thing that he said that he felt very close to his heart is just that the team needs time to grow. And a lot of what this has been early on, the fact that they are in the middle of the pack North America, they aren't worried about the Crucible spot is actually a huge thing for them. And there's not too much pressure. Obviously, they want to do well, but they also don't think that they have to be that 1st place right now, that in the long run they will be able to get there. So that finding a place for K1 Pro, figuring out who is going to be playing what, that was all of part 1 that part 1 and part 2 that we've experienced. Moving past the midseason brawl, he's like, that is when we become that top tier team.
I love that story that we have been able to even see those adjustments come out, right? Remember, geez, there's like all these memories about B-Step already that we have from Phase 1. Remember the time that they played versus Freedom and they busted out Jaina and Tyrande. They played old school B-Step heroes that we know and we love, and they wrecked Freedom with them.
They did.
And then they switched the roles now, and being able to have Caffeine and K1 Pro together, that friend synergy coming in. Man, it's been cool to see, and the standings will reset after Phase 1 is done for Phase 2, so you never know where B-Step will end up. Right now, they're ending up with a global and a Zebo, though, in this draft.
I was going to say, as for the draft of this game so far, taking a bit away from the stories, Tempo Storm has themselves that Anubarak and Akil Thos. Anubarak has been post 2.0 on the Genji patch, a very big focus of a lot of teams here in North America. The Cocoon has been almost as priority as everything else in the game. You know, just even globals has been matched there. So that is going to be strong for Tempo, committing with the KT. They've got a lot of single target damage, really good effectiveness in the wave clear and the 4-man.
Especially with Rhaegar.
Yeah, but B-Step, in fact, is going to have that global and a solid representative in the top lane.
B-Step still has Lucio if they want to get Lucio, unless that is the possible Tempo Storm ban away from B-Step.
I do think that Tempo Storm has committed so heavily towards supports after by picking up onto their own that it would be really smart, unless they're afraid of like a double global or a niche overly synergistic pick with what B-Step already has. So that is what they go with, but the Zeratul is not a synergistic pick by any means. So Tempo Storm, normally that alludes to, again, who they have in the top lane is my biggest fear, because it's on Dragonshire. Zeratul, literally I don't think a Zeratul on Dragonshire has made it without me talking about how he has one way to play the map. And so because of this, with the Zeratul banned out, I automatically think Tempo Storm is either going for a unique 2-1-2 kind of laning matchup, but their picks don't hint towards that ban does, or they're going for an extremely squishy top laner. Falstad could be it. It would match the global and not be vulnerable to the pick. So that
matches Tempo too.
That means that B-Step has this rotation to possibly deny it, though. It could be a double global. So I don't mind the ban out of Tempo Storm. Zeratul is obviously objectively very, very strong, but it does seem a bit out of place.
Does it worry that it gave too much information to B-Step potentially?
It could have, yes. It's just whether or not B-Step, within their 60 seconds, identify this and whether or not they consider it even a problem. You know, step 1 to solving a problem is you have to figure out it is one. Step 2 is it's your responsibility to solve it.
Very similar Dragonshire draft to when B-Step played Superstars on Dragonshire. Getting Medivh and Nazebo. They don't have their Anubarak to pair with this. and Karazim is their support. They last had Rhaegar, so that will hurt them again in the wave clear department because they couldn't get Rhaegar. It was taken, but Karazim has been a favorite fairly consistently for APM throughout all of Phase 1.
And with those last 2 picks here from B-Step in this draft, it is concerning. They are a little bit of everything, but they don't win at anything, you know? And sometimes that can be all you want in a composition, and other times that can be your downfall. And it does feel, with the power picks Tempo Storm already has, and I feel like these next 2, except for the Chen, are going to be that much more powerful. That is going to be very difficult for B-Step to come back.
I wonder if that is a 2-1-2 with Chen Falstad.
The Zeratul pick, or ban, like I said, so these kind of things happen more frequently than maybe I make them audible on a broadcast of a ban that hints towards other weird sub-strategies. But this is one where it did seem so out of place that it meant something, right? And I don't necessarily think that Tempo Storm has to. I would like them to now that they picked a Chen, because I never am that big of a fan of Chen as a solo laner. I think he does a lot more to the 2-1-2 strategy. I think he provides a lot in that department. And with the lack of wave clear that exists on the side of B-Step here, they can't punish a 2-1-2. Almost no matter what that last pick is going to be. And we know...
Has to be their primary warrior, right?
Yeah, it's
Muradin.
going to be the Muradin, and it's just not enough wave clear. Tempo Storm has a really cool opportunity. Send Falstad up in the mid, Rhaegar and KT up on bottom, or that one's a bit harder to judge. So when you run a 2-1-2, you want 2 things. You want one thing to focus on the 2s of your composition and your laning phase. You want to make sure that you have not only survivability and sustain, so that goes, usually the support goes with the squishiest, but the best wave clear is usually what happens
like
there.
Kael'thas.
Yes, and so I expected a Rhaegar and the KT to kind of stick together, hold their own in a lane, but a Nubarak and Chen don't do too much either, to the point where I actually think, like in a noob KT, their kill potential's high enough, their wave clear's good, and they're beefy enough that it's okay, and then send the Chen to just drain with the Rhaegar to make sure that he never dies, and he can be such a big nuisance on his own. As long as Rhaegar's there to make sure he doesn't get ganked, suddenly Chen becomes a huge problem.
You like that better than having potentially a Nubarak in the middle to stop that wave from getting too far in, and then he can join whichever lane has a possibility
The
of a
reason
pick?
you want Falstad to be a mid is so he can fly. He has the entire map to be a gank. So suddenly when something becomes a weakness or they're successful on bottom, Falstad flies top and it's a 3 versus 2, your front wall is gone. So Falstad, he's the placeholder. Especially post 7, when he can dominate his own lane as well, it becomes very oppressive. But Tempo Storm, this is more theory crafting. They haven't even committed to the 2-1-2. They might go a traditional 1-4. Their comp can. And it still, in my opinion, beats out that of B-Step. It's going to be, if the names B-Step and Tempo Storm are not separated enough, these compositions kind of just bumped them that much farther.
Yeah, they are very strange comps for our first game, which is ready. So let's get into the series. Game number 1.
Game number 1 on Dragonshire. Here in the blue is going to be B-Step. APM playing Karazim. King Caffeine is on the Muradin. K1 Pro is going to be the Dahaka iDream playing Medivh. And last here we have Nazeebo played by McIntyre. It gets so exciting.
And a pause by McIntyre.
And it just, you know, it's just like they baited our momentum. I got my enthusiasm. I've got my excitement going. And then the jazz hands, everything. And then we get the pause.
We can talk a little bit more about B-Step's draft while we're here, because we mostly talked about the opportunities and possibilities for Tempo Storm. So now B-Step have Medivh. They're relying a lot on Nazeebo to be able to do the damage. Last time we saw Medivh picked by B-Step, didn't go over so well. They did win the game, but it took a long time for iDream to finish his Master's Touch stacks. He kept getting picked.
It was about like 20 minutes.
It was
when we saw
level
that?
20.
It was level 20.
As they got 20 Master's Touch.
Yeah, we had some pretty heavy anxiety that game watching the Master's Touch attempt to be stacked. But beyond just the Medivh and how well it's going to be played, even in a really optimal, almost, I want to dare say flawless, because Medivh flawlessly played. I don't know if he can lose. But in just a very good performance coming out from iDream once again in this game, I don't know if he has the tools with the comp. They don't have a lot of wave clear. Like, to reiterate, the composition is Nazeebo, Murden, Medivh, Dahaka, and Karazim. So Dahaka is going to be the solo laner. Karazim, negative wave clear, pretty much. Medivh has only 1 Q unless he hits a single target. Nazeebo's up there, and Murden's kind of meh. So then what else do? We know if you don't win in wave clear, you can make up for it in kill potential. Not enough damage in single target bursts. Only other reserve kind of for them is going to be through the Medivh, through heavy rotations, because they will not be able to accent the 4-man that well. It's going to be more pick focused, and again, they don't have that burst. So I just see B-Step slowly losing the laning phase unless there is a, again, catastrophic mistake on the side of Tempo Storm. And in Dragonshire, laning the lanes is sometimes all you need to do.
Well, we're ready to get back into the game. So we'll see how B-Step wants to compensate and make sure they keep up with the wave clear. We've already introduced B-Step in the blue, but in the red is Tempo Storm. Support player and highest KDA of the league, June, playing Rhaegar. Fury playing Anubarak. Cothenluck playing Falstad. Psalm returning to his Kael'thas. And finally, Caterpillar showing us his Chen skills.
So we'll see what laning matchup Tempo Storm decides that they want to go with. It's all going to be a lot on Chen, where he moves to. In the solo versus the Dahaka, it's a bit more of a placeholder. Tempo Storm will still, again, no matter what laning matchup they go with, I feel like they win a 1-4, they win a 2-1-2. Just due to my distaste towards Chen, I prefer the 2-1-2 coming out from them, but they're going to kick it old school, keep it traditional.
So Chen will hang out versus Dahaka. Dahaka has his drag to try to stop Chen from being able to drink his brew, but Tempo Storm using the fact that they have such good wave clear to their advantage to immediately start sieging versus the towers of B-Step. Take down the towers, take down the structures, those frontline structures on Dragonshire, and you make it all the harder for your opponents to be able to claim shrines.
And I think that was a nice, simple example of the lack of wave clear on the side of B-Step, but more importantly, how they could make up through it through kill potential. You saw when they commit to these front walls, what do you immediately, B-Step gets aggressive to be like, well, what if we try and kill them? And yes, they didn't obviously get a pick there, but their composition at almost no point has that, and that is the counter response to wave clear, kill potential. And so just anytime you can take a look at that, it's more of an overarching theme, but it's one that for some reason seems very hard to convey to the average audience, so I'm trying to find any samples we can to see that, and I think we'll see multiple here on Dragonshire.
We do appreciate you finding those examples to explain it. One nice thing that B-Step has is if they can get a June kill, first of all, and they do first blood as Falstad flies down. Zombie Wall does stall out the waves of minions for a little bit, and they can also use the tankiness of Muradin to do that. So trying to do what they can to make sure that the waves aren't there to soak the shots so that Tempo Storm can attack the towers more easily.
Yeah, that is, it's a route that we've seen a lot of teams go, especially those that are losing the level 1 fights, that you kind of baby the minion wave, save it as long as you can, and it buys you a bit of free time, but it's always a Band-Aid on a bigger wound type situation.
Exactly. Eventually they will run out of ammo.
Yes, it's just like, congratulations, you bought yourself 30 seconds, and if you can make that 30 seconds work, sometimes that is all that is going to matter. But usually, it's kind of like, oh, that was, like, I see where you're working, but, like, it's not me. I love that swap, and they get the camp.
They do. What? Nice portal from V-Step. iDream giving all of the mobility necessary. He's been using those portals to make the rotations between lanes go faster too. Look at this.
That was perfect. That was just what B-Step needed. Talking about that 30-second window they may miss out on, they're able to do so. I just love the bait and switch that we saw there. Dropping the portal is like, Medivh throws shield on himself, and he's like, you know, you want to deal with this? And then the minute he goes out, Caps back in, and he's like, you don't want to deal with a Murd. And thanks for the Giants. We'll take these, walk away. It's forcing Tempo to get it clear, and they've been on the back foot for a couple of seconds here, but nothing to be gained by B-Step yet.
Dahaka held on to top as long as he could before Caterpillar forced his way onto the Sun Shrine, the Moon Shrine under contest. And Tempo Storm will be able to get it. Kael'thas is in mid, potentially trying to get that Dragon Knight, but Medivh is one of the best guards there because he has so much self-sustain. Kael'thas is going to head up. K1 Pro might be in trouble.
He may be in trouble, or he's just going to be fine. He's got his passive. One thing to note as well, ooh, Calf trying to be aggressive here. Fury buying a lot of time. Medivh will delay a mid, so nothing gained, nothing lost here. This Dwarf Toss is still up. But the one thing I did want to note was the level 4 coming out from Caterpillar there on the Chen in the solo. He ended up going with the Ring of Fire, and that means every time that we see him, spit out the fire, he's going to have that AoE damage aura. And what that does mainly is make his laning presence go from I'm annoying, here's my shielding, to I'm actually a problem. And so that is one of the things that we often don't see in Chens, or it's a hit or miss. Ooh, the stun out. McIntyre not looking like he's going to get away. Only one pick.
We had an adjustment for K1 Pro's build 2 to go with it, Feeding Frenzy. So basic attacks, reducing Drag's cooldown by 1.5 seconds. If he can get those consistently, then he has Drag up more often to be able to combo not only with the other stuns of his team, like for King Caffeine, but trying to stop Chen from being able to drink his brew as often. He does give up Symbiosis there, so he won't have Dark Swarm up as often, so he's choosing to have his cooldown reduced for Drag over Dark Swarm.
That may even lead to more of an isolation type build, just because without Symbiosis, then you don't have that frequency of damage, which then makes you less of a focus target, because the reason why you have to focus, and get value out of adaptation onto the Dahaka is largely just based on his damage is so high, the backline can't ignore him.
Right.
And so whenever you do not have that repeated amount of damage, you're kind of a 1W and you're out type deal, isolation suddenly becomes a lot more appealing.
I love seeing isolation played too from teams, especially versus a Zeratul, but we don't have that here, but seeing that if the team's coordination is on point to get that isolation target out. That was one of the cool things I heard being talked about from Team 8 when they had their scrims versus Tempo Storm with Dyrus, was talking about making sure that they were communicating where the isolation target should go. Tempo Storm gets another pick on Muradin, and with that heroic abilities, Storm, Earth, and Fire for Chen. Fury standing on the point, uses Cocoon, steals away, and walk off with that. Thank you very much, B-Step.
It's a 60-second cooldown, so B-Step, if they manage to pick up their heroics for themselves, may look to rebuttal. But for now, it's still kind of that slow, stalled-out laning phase. K1 Pro getting harassed with that damage up on top. Cattle, oh my gosh, Medivh's shield is there. Not enough auto attack damage. iDream saves the day, keeps K1 Pro alive.
Speaking of auto attack damage, secret weapon, not boomerang for Falstad.
Goes for that. It only increases the damage output onto the front line. More single target DPS coming out from the Falstad. Less wave clear. K1 Pro comes in. Drag interrupted by the Gust. And that is now Koth and Luck making it out just fine.
Yeah, probably we'll see Giant Killer paired with that, I would say, unless he wants to have the hammering out more often to be able to get that auto attack burst damage that he gets while hammering's out with secret weapon. Love to see what Koth and Luck wants to get at 13. So far, Tempo Storm doing what we believed would happen with the composition so far. Master's Touch about halfway done for iDream.
And the one thing about this, too, that Dragonshire is such a deceiving map, because what we see here, at first glance, hold on a minute, he does have one underground attempt, but I don't think it's going to matter. Pops his passive. K1 Pro making it out once more. But it's so, we see this, and Tempo Storm has never full 5-on-5 fought B-Step, and not just, seen the clash that you traditionally see on some of the other maps. And so you could look at this and be like, well, B-Step needs to stop getting picked. But it's more of how this map works with the rotations then forces the wave clear, which then forces those picks to be possible. So the byproduct of the laning has now led towards these single target picks that Tempo Storm's been able to achieve. It is not a misplay. It is only on the sense that your composition can't keep up with those circumstances.
B-Step have some tools to try to win team fights once they happen. They have Leyline Seal, and 7-sided Strike was the choice for Kharazim, knowing that there is still a lot of sustainability already in place for the team. Not only do they have self-sustained heroes, but they have Medivh to help out. Gravity Lapse hits. There is Medivh giving Force of Will to King Caffeine. Most of B-Step hanging out in the bottom lane, and Chen and Falstad will use this opportunity to take the top 4.
And this is, again, the wave clear of Tempo Storm. Whenever they're dominating on the bottom half of the map, they can patiently just kind of stall out a fight, wave clear out, get pressure on bottom, and then because they one-shot the wave with only 3 members, 2 people split pushing on top, find themselves a 4, and they still have Dragon Knight pressure. Like, how does that even happen?
There's 7-sided strike, Gargantuan used to delay as long as they can. King Caffeine continuing to body block, but Fury's just buying time until he can burrow charge away. It won't be possible. Finally, B-Step get a kill using 7-sided strike and the isolation opportunities that they have to get that. So 25 more seconds without a new Barak.
But it did get a Dragon Knight here. That's actually interesting too. That was the second spell that we've seen interrupted through a hard CC in this game, like the last frame that it was possible. Between the Gust and the Drag and the Stormbolt and the Burrow there, one netting the kill, the other not. And this is going to be a Tempo Storm Dragon Knight with top 4 down, bottom 4 down, mid's kind of all that remains. But the 9-minute DK is not necessarily powerful enough to kind of just walk up, breathe fire, and intimidate B-Step away.
Rotations coming down from B-Step to defend this now that they have 13.
Kado's merely just soaking with this. He has no intent of taking anything down. He's just like, well, I have a super, powerful minion on the board for a little bit longer. 8 seconds, she's going to be down, committed towards mid.
Use the small wall to flying kick out. Storm bolts.
Not even used. Fury patiently waiting. Falstead's still up on top, though. Maybe not the best fight for them to take, but Tempo Storm has an easy retreat. Kado goes in. There's going to be first Storm Bolt, but he's still got a brew. K1 Pro, no range for a drag, and Cawthon happily split pushing the entire time up on top.
That gives Tempo Storm a level lead over B-Step. Fly away now that people have moved off the board, so B-Step will have to be content with some mercenary camps instead. Tempo Storm even going to invade this camp, even though they don't have the 16 advantage, and they get it. All
because that Dahaka rotation towards top to match the Falstad gave information. Another thing that you don't often consider when Falstad is split pushing and then flies away if you're attempting to gank is he reveals as he flies. So then you get to see anybody in his path as well, only bettering your odds of capitalizing elsewhere. But this is a dead Falstad. The only way he survives this is a colossal mistake. The first Stormbolt gun was the first. Now mount up, Dwarf Toss up in 2 seconds. He's got barrel roll back up now, though.
Max there, K1 Pro's here too, trying to dodge drag. 7-sided strike, though, is happy to get that where the drag could not. Falstad taken out, but Tempo Storm knows that it took so long and so many resources of B-Step just to get that pick. They'll use their 16s and pressure the bottom with a lot of mercenaries.
And I honestly think that that pick was probably worth the keep front wall at this stage of the game, the experience that gains you, and the death being onto a global target that can fly itself right back, and you've got the map so pressured out. One pick on Falstad at this point. Any later than this, probably not acceptable, but at this point, was still a winning trade for Tempo.
Yeah, it was great to see that Tempo immediately recognizing that get out or not, Cawthon's on his own, so let's make sure that we use our 16 advantage to still make sure that we get something out of this. And not only did they get Keep Towers in the bottom, they pushed that lane so far out that now Nubarak can grab that shrine, top's grabbed by Chin, and now B-Step, who is taking a mercenary camp, are not in position yet because they don't have 16. They have iDream standing over the point. Does he have his stacks? He has his stacks finished, so he can go in and try to delay this, deny the Dragon Knight, but they don't have 16. This is a scary place to be in for B-Step.
Naz is still trying to steal it up on bottom. He will manage to get it before Tempo Storm gets themselves a Dragon Knight, so good delay coming out from B-Step here on Dragonshire. Now back to the Shrining phase. Tempo Storm, again, they're going to maintain control, but luckily here for B-Step, for the first time in a long while, they have themselves the same talent tier, and they're going to have to take this fight. It's going to start on bottom.
Making a portal so that somebody can join iDream and helping him get this shrine. Scaring away Tempo Storm. Chen versus Dahaka in the top, but there's a mercenary camp, that one that B-Step took, to help that out to alleviate more of the pressure that's been building this entire game versus B-Step.
Oh, there goes the flight from Cawthon Luck on to K1 Pro. He's got the passive, he's got his heroic, and he's just battling it out. There's the portal. If he goes out, oh man, this rotation here from the members of B-Step. Can he get into the portal? No, he can't. The CC is going to be too real coming out from Tempo Storm, and they are not done. They are still hungry. They want themselves a K1 Pro.
K1 Pro has already used a lot of his defensive options. Here comes Burrow Charge from Fury too. Dahaka will go down eventually. B-Step still trying to fight where they can, but now King Caffeine's in danger. Dwarf Toss is out. We have a Gravity Lapse, we have a Burrow Charge, and Avatar was used, then the Gravity Lapse. So heroics and deaths for B-Step. Tempo Storm has 40 seconds to do what they would like with Dragonshire.
And with Chen's rotation, he has quickly shown what he would like to do. That is going to be another Dragonite going over to Tempo Storm here. Probably going to put more emphasis either to mid fort onto bottom keep wall or bottom keep wall onto the fort. Man, June butt biting. Max range around that zombie wall actually steals a camp on top of it. So this is just, I mean, that's the kind of stuff though, right? Where it's talking about Tempo Storm forcing an advantage rather than letting your opponent get that giant, buying the 10 seconds to get rid of it. They're like, no, that's going to back our Dragonite now. Thank you for this. And this is the capitalization, that window of late game that Tempo Storm always aspires to have, that I thought Tempo Storm would not even let exist, and it looks like they are very quickly going to close out this game.
Yeah, B-Step have finally gotten a lot of what they would like. Reabsorption, the big one is Spider Colony. They're not even at the Vile Infection point yet, but Tempo Storm is all but 20. They have claimed every Dragon Knight. They have controlled every lane. They have lost 0 forts while getting the first keep of the game. Tempo Storm is on a tear, and B-Step starting to go in, trying to see if maybe they can start to make their miracle comeback.
Psalm ends up going down. That was a huge step in the right direction. June eats a Stormbolt. Chen going with that Storm Earth Fire, diving onto the Nazebo as the Dragonite beating away, but June ends up going down with 4 members of B-Step on top of him. 2 members of Tempo already dead here, and it looks like B-Step not even needing the same talent here. They'll take that miracle fight here, 18 into 20.
They've got a Portal 2. They're still chasing Cattle down. No Storm, Earth, and Fire. Stormbolt connects. Caterpillar taken out. And that gives even more time for B-Step to start coming back into this game. Where can they try to make their siege? Top lane is the closest place, also where the minions are pushing. The bottom lane is so far away, even though that would be the preferred lane.
The most optimal thing for B-Step is open up the map or look for a win condition. Top keep is not a win condition. It is a place to go and die the same way you saw Tempo Storm with the Dragonite. It's too risky. It's why people always neglect the northern lane in Tempo or on Dragonshire. So instead, it's got to be a minimum of 3 forts is what I would like to see from them. They started with the top. iDream's going to portal away. Now mid should be the next focus. They still got 20 seconds while they're down a man, and it looks like they are going to force it here, but maybe a little slower than I would have liked to see.
Every structure they take down quickens their pace to level 20, where they can catch up to Tempo Storm and get another late game fight that we know B-Step love to get. Gargantuan soaks up some shots from the fort as he goes back to the grave for 50 seconds.
And so what I'm really afraid of now for B-Step is I always talk about the top lane and the bottom lane, the distance to safety on Dragonshire. All these are extremely relevant things when looking at the laning part. One awesome thing is they've now got 20 in a global. And Falstad did not go with Epic Mount, so he does not have the ability to match that Apex Predator coming out from K1 Pro. But the biggest thing is the fort on bottom. This is the most likely place to take a late game team fight on Dragonshire other than mid over the Dragonite itself. And there's a fort still there. It's going to be a very easy place for Tempo Storm to kind of gauge around, get a free tap, take the fight that they feel comfortable with taking, all based on the fact that B-Step's failure to open up the map properly after that last wipe.
Well, I'm looking at level 20 talents. Vile Infection is already completed, so that's a big win for B-Step. Fight's starting to go in on King Caffeine, but he is the tanky Murd and he uses Avatar. Tempo Storm.
They back, they tap, and now they're looking to take the fight again that they feel comfortable taking. This is all that they wanted to make happen, but that split onto the Caffeine is going to be too much. 7-sided strike and a Stormbolt. It's going to put Chen right to sleep. Leyline seal to seal the deal. June in that zombie wall, and he is out. 2 members dead. Tempo Storm falling apart, and B-Step saving the late game as always.
Incredible synergy from B-Step, again in the late game, has gotten them a firm footing to get back into this game. K1 Pro is going to take this. Falstad has to fly away. 2 shrines controlled by B-Step. Can they get their first Dragon Knight? They are going to try. They've got no support, no secondary warrior for Tempo Storm for 37 seconds still.
They're going to commit K1 Pro.
That means no Dahaka to soak up in the top lane versus that Mercenary camp. It'll have to be iDream, but he has Guardian of Tears Fall, so that makes it faster. It doesn't one-shot Mercenaries, but it does take out minions and catapults.
That is a very conscious effort there for BStep to commit that to the Dragon Knight. We'll see what they make happen there as they still have at least a primary warrior outside. Psalm trying to get the first clear, throwing out, getting value out of that Pyromancer there. I guess it's Pyromaniac, huh?
It is.
Key front wall. It's going to be the next focus.
Phoenix. Got a portal just in case Psalm. That forces all of the positioning of Tempo Storm up and to the left. Still halfway, but K1 Pro's taking a lot of damage with this Dragon Knight. They'd love to start getting the fire onto this keep.
BStep needs to accept that this is not going to happen and spend this 30 seconds being effective, like mid and mid keep wall. But instead, it looks like they're going to try and force. They can, but it feels like it was about 20% too late. Good Gus. Now their cap goes right through the portal, getting damage onto Psalm, forcing the Ancestral. He portals back, but Medivh so low on HP. On the wrong side of the battlefield, he actually gets cocooned. That is a 1 HP iDream in there, and he's going to bust out. I don't think he's going to survive.
K1 Pro's going to try to save him, but he didn't get Force of Will in time. Fury made sure of that taken out. K1 Pro deep inside the lines of battle for Tempo Storm, who get 2 kills as B-Step tries to retreat.
The flight!
Flight Gust!
He doesn't even use it. It's just
he
more
doesn't have it.
He's just scaring him away, getting the chase. June's in a tough spot, healing it out. He's going to be fine now, eating some spiders. Good gravity lapse. But McIntyre manages to stay alive there.
Tempo is still trying to stop this. Cattle's such a great chase target, but he is fairly low in
Cap
health,
shoots
especially
suicide.
with this.
Cap needs a suicide. Naz can get the peel, but Cap has got to be the one who goes up and gets them away from the core. Okay, so they aren't going to commit. That was a really good defense from McIntyre. All of that came down to Nazeebo's dots while walking away, being like, hey, you do not want to kill this core. There was still a counter-argument to that. In a Chen composition, you should never be afraid to kill the core because Chen will just not take damage. But he also has no damage to the core itself. It's a bit of a, you know, double-edged sword that Chen provides when it comes to ending the game. But BStep has managed to find themselves in it. I don't dare say I do. It's an even game. Miraculously, it is almost dead even here. Keep for keep, 8-8 in kills, 22-22. BStep.
This is why they picked Dragonshire.
This is why they picked Dragonshire.
Exactly why they picked Dragonshire.
Was Infernal Shrines banned by Tempo Storm?
I did not see.
We got to keep track because
they've been banning it a lot, so I would guess that they continue.
BStep has got to be trying to pick up the Infernal Shrines, right? Like, there's no way they don't want to take this late game. Fury with the invade, quickly going to make APM not want to get into this at all. He's going to dash right on out.
Tempo did ban Infernal Shrines. So it's one less, but there are still some other battlegrounds that BStep like.
Night camp pressure up on top. Falstad's already got that shrine on lockdown. So it's back to the fight of bottom. What we do have here is BStep's got a win condition, and it's the fight on bottom. So what I was criticizing before is a huge counter to them with that bottom fort being so very, very close. Now is a huge win with that keep being dead on bottom being the most realistic. It works both ways. Tempo Storm has themselves a keep too, but BStep for the first time ever has a fight that if they win, they can win the game.
Right. BStep has to keep Dahaka ideally in lane, up in top lane for a lot longer though, which is maybe a possibility that Cawthon flies down and then gets a fight before Dahaka has been able or feels comfortable to brush stock in. Gravity Lapse hits King Caffeine. All heroics are available once Gargantuan is up in 7 seconds. June has taken a lot of damage. The poke from McIntyre has been perfection so far in this late game. Look at K1 Pro. Look at this flank.
He's going for it. June is going to scurry around, but iDream, he gets the drag. K1 Pro, June under so much pressure, but the Gus, it buys him time. He's still alive, but there is the final finish. APM ends up getting the pick here. He goes down. Now that is 1-for-1 in this fight.
It's a support for a support too, and the flame strike damage is ripping through Medivh, so now no Force of Wills to help out BStep either. Fury goes in. It's McIntyre. He's after the primary damage. He has Ice Block.
He Ice Blocked the Q coming out from Kel'Thuzad. so he stays alive. K1 Pro quickly falling, though. Cattle is going to end up getting that channel. 4 members now dead. McIntyre throws out the zombie ball, but he's about to be as dead as those in a couple of seconds as he is trapped.
Oh man, he dodges that, he dodges this, but finally he is brought down by Tempo Storm, who wipe B-Step in the late game. 24 minutes in, and they will get the Dragon Knight.
They've got themselves a Dragon Knight in 20 seconds before they even have to worry about anybody on the side of B-Step. They've got 45 up until that Naz spawns. It is very realistically going to be a quick GG. Now 24-minute DK, just a bit too much, and they have a gust.
Tempo Storm, it looked scary for a hot minute, but they're able to still take the victory in Dragonshire, and we talked about it. This was one of the best chances for B-Step to take a game off of Tempo Storm, and they very nearly did it.
They did, and you know, it was textbook. I'll give B-Step one thing: they are consistent, and that's a good thing in the sense that they've always got something to cross compare to be like, were we better or worse than these things? But it is just heartbreaking. Also, it just blows my mind that they can even manage to stay in these games without Infernal Shrines available, though, and already losing on Dragonshire. I can't think of any game where they can bank on a 20 stall. Maybe Towers, maybe, but Tempo would just slaughter with the globals, it feels like, on that map.
Yeah, the only thing I was thinking of is, what about Tomb? Maybe if they want to go to Tomb sometimes?
Yeah, Tomb is one of those that it can make it to the late game as long as the first 15 minutes were almost dead even, right? And then, or a huge mistake on the team that was just banking on gems and somebody gets picked. But that is one that also can extend that long. I think it's actually used to be our longest average map in general was Tomb.
Well, Dragonshire in the bag already. That's one down for Tempo Storm. After the break, game number 2. Stick with us. So far in this late game, look at K1 Pro. Look at this flank.
He's going for it. June is going to scurry around, but iDream, he gets the drag. K1 Pro, June under so much pressure, but the gust, it buys him time. He's still alive, but there is the final finish. APM ends up getting the pick here. He goes down. Now that is 1-for-1 in this fight.
It's a support for a support too, and the Flame Strike damage is ripping through Medivh, so now no Force of Wills to help out B-Step either. Fury goes in, it's McIntyre. He's after the primary damage. He has Ice Block!
He Ice Blocked the Q coming up from Kel'Thas, so he stays alive. K1 Pro quickly falling, though. Cattle is going to end up getting that channel. 4 members now dead. McIntyre throws out the zombie ball, but he's...
The demon Asmodan had his ultimate victory within reach, until the opposing heroes dealt him a devastating defeat. Asmodan went back to the drawing board and rediscovered his love of the game. The Lord of Sin became the Lord of the Slam.
This is my house. Let's see if you've got game. There it is. Dude, welcome to my jam.
The swarm is eternal. We evolve. We conquer. We will consume all within the Nexus. Your villains, your heroes will all become part of my brood. Okay, fine. You two. You will try to resist, but it is only a matter of time, for the swarm is eternal.